Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex here. Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be speaking about mid-season driver swaps that kind of failed. And this was a subject that was suggested by you guys, so massive thank you for you guys for suggesting all these subjects. A lot of the ones that you suggest I actually do put into production. I think they're really interesting, and okay, some of them take a bit more time than others to understand exactly what we're speaking about, but you know, it's always worth it. So, quick note about the gameplay. It's iRacing, Formula 3, Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch is my local track, so I like driving it. I had to have the racing line on though, getting used to the track, so apologies. Anyway, now that's all cleared up, let's jump into the first one on this list, which is Luca Badoer to Ferrari. So we spoke about this in, I think, even maybe the last video, but of course after Felipe Massa's sad accident midway through the 2009 season at the Hungarian Grand Prix, Ferrari needed a driver. So it was touted that Michael Schumacher, who was out of Formula 1 for a couple of years at that point, was going to return to the Scuderia for a couple of races to try and help fill in whilst Felipe Massa was injured. Well, that was going to be toward the end of the season. But unfortunately, Michael Schumacher wasn't able to. He wasn't sort of fully able to race. He wasn't fully fit to race. I think he had some sort of injury. I can't remember right now. But he did have some sort of problem that meant that he couldn't race for Ferrari. And that meant they had to sort of scrape the barrel a little bit. Of course, everyone wanted Michael Schumacher to return, but in a way, they got an Italian into the Ferrari for the next race, which was, I guess, kind of good for Italian fans, but maybe people wouldn't have appreciated it was Luca Badoer, who hadn't done a competitive Formula 1 race since 1999. So, 10 years since his last Formula 1 race, he came back for the European Grand Prix in 2009. As we mentioned in the last one, it didn't work. In the two races that he did do for the team, he didn't score in either of them. He actually was the last running car in both of those two races, the European Grand Prix and the Belgian Grand Prix. And in the Belgian Grand Prix, his teammate won, just to put that into perspective for you. So it wasn't a very successful mid-season swap for Ferrari, and we'll speak about it later. It didn't unfortunately get much better. But that's the first one on our list, Luca Badoer to Ferrari in 2009. That was very much a failure. So the next one on this list is Heinz Frentzen to Prost in the 2001 season. So the start of the season, Heinz Frentzen was actually racing for the Jordan team, but just before his home Grand Prix, the German Grand Prix, he was sacked from the Jordan team. Which of course you'd be a little bit disappointed about. The team you've been with for a couple of years now and built into a somewhat decent midfield team. You know, getting sacked from them just before your home Grand Prix is a little bit disappointing. So that was the case. Unfortunately for him, he was sacked just before that race and he was looking for a new drive. And he actually took over the Prost seat, which wasn't very competitive. The Prost seat was previously held by John Lacey, who weirdly went to Jordan to replace Heinz Frentzen, but the Prost car was never very successful in Formula 1, and I feel very sorry for Heinz Frentzen because he had a really good career. From 1994 all the way to 1999, his career was on the up. He had a really good season with Williams in 1997, and unfortunately they went through their dip in 1998. He went to Jordan in 1999, won 2 races for them. 2 races for Jordan. And then 2000 wasn't great, but he still scored 11 points, got a podium, a couple of podiums. And then 2001, fired halfway through the season. Prost doesn't score any points. So yeah, the Prost, I think I've already mentioned this, it was one of the worst sort of teams in Formula 1. Of course, Alain Prost, a legend of Formula 1, but unfortunately Prost never really got that much success. They did get a bit early, very early on in their career. They scored 2 podiums in their first season. Brazil and Spain with Olivier Panis, and once again with Jarno Trulli in the European Grand Prix in 1999. But unfortunately, they only really scored a couple of points here and there over the majority of their sort of 5 seasons. Their most successful season was weirdly their first season in the sport, and that was where they were using the Honda Power Unit. As soon as they switched to the Persia and then the Acer, they didn't really have much success. So it was a bad mood for Heinz Frentzen, and unfortunately for him, Prost gave up the ghost at the end of the 2001 season. He went on to race Heinz Frentzen in 2002 and 2003, but then he ended his career just after that with Sauber. So I feel a bit sorry for Heinz Frentzen. This move to Jordan, from Jordan to Prost, was I don't know, it must have been a weird turn of events. He didn't deserve it whatsoever, I think. I feel that he could have won a championship. He got close in 1997. A lot of things didn't go his way, and he was beaten by Villeneuve, but I don't know, I feel so sorry for this guy because he had so much unfulfilled potential in Formula 1, and he just sort of kept making the bad moves at the wrong, a bit like Fernando Alonso to a lesser extent. As soon as he sort of left Williams, he had a bit of success at Jordan in 1999, but then it never really went that well after that for him. So yeah, this move to Prost in 2001 was a bit of a failure. He didn't score any points. He finished, well, he retired 9th, retired 10th, 12th. It wasn't terrible, but the Prost team was one that never really had too much success in Formula 1. So this next one continues a story we were talking about just earlier on, and that is the Ferrari shambles towards the end of the 2009 season. Of course, they had a very talented driver in Felipe Massa, who nearly won the year prior in 2008. He nearly won the championship, but Ferrari weren't quite the team they were in 2008 anyway. In 2009, they really didn't have a very good year. I think they had one of their worst starts in Formula 1 ever in 2009. It got better, but unfortunately Massa never saw that good end or gooder end. And yeah, so they were really scrapping for drivers after getting rid of Badoer after the Belgian Grand Prix and the embarrassing 2 races for them in Europe and Belgium. They looked for a different driver, and somebody that had recent success, finishing 2nd at the Belgian Grand Prix, was Giancarlo Fisichella, who we know as a very talented driver. But Giancarlo Fisichella, when he moved over, it just didn't quite work out as well as he would have liked. So unfortunately for him, he had this great result with Force India and everything looked like it was on the up, and then as soon as he made this switch over to Ferrari, it didn't quite work out for him. And so he got that 2nd, then he went to the Italian Grand Prix, his home race in a Ferrari. That was probably his best result. It was his best result. It was probably his best drive, at least, the Italian Grand Prix with Ferrari. But after that, with so little preparation with the team, it really, really hit home. In Singapore, he finished 13th, Japan 12th, Brazil 10th, and Abu Dhabi 16th. His best result was that 9th in the Italian Grand Prix. But he didn't score any points, once again, for the Ferrari team. And if we look at Kimi Räikkönen in those races as well, he finished 3rd in Italy, finished 4th in Japan, 6th in Brazil. Yes, Fisichella didn't quite have the preparation, but it kind of was, once again, a little bit of I don't know whether it was a rash move or not. I know they wanted to get rid of Badoer and they were just scrambling for options, but it just didn't really work out for them. I think they really wanted someone in there to come in and just score some points. You know, however small they were, just 1 or 2 points here and there would have been good. But yeah, the decisions, it wasn't great. I think maybe to be honest, I can't even say what they should have done, because let's be honest, who prepares for that scenario? Who thinks that one of your 2-star drivers is going to have an injury that's very life-threatening, the one that could possibly kill them? I don't think many people really plan for that to happen. I mean, everyone has a reserve driver just in case, but I don't think they have a reserve driver that's capable of, going out there and competing on the same level as their main drivers. I can understand it was a tough decision. Fisichella was much better than Badoer, but I think the lack of preparation really didn't enable him to get the best out of that car. But he didn't do terribly. He didn't embarrass himself. That's the main thing, and he's sort of built a career with Ferrari after that. So it's worked out for Fisichella, but that end of the 2009 season for that 2nd Ferrari car was miserable. He scored no points after that accident at the Hungarian. Well, that was in qualifying, wasn't it? So they didn't score points from the Hungarian to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix or Brazilian Grand Prix. Yeah, they didn't score any points. And for a Ferrari team, that's embarrassing, whatever year and whatever driver is in the car. Oh, I just realised what's next on this list. I've got to talk about it. Danny Kvyat to Toro Rosso in 2016. Okay, for people that don't know, I'm a fan of Danny Kvyat. My 2 favourite Formula 1 drivers of all time are Danny Kvyat and Adrian Sutil. I know, very random choices for some, but they're my favourite drivers. Yeah, so this is not a nice one to talk about. But okay, Danny Kvyat was demoted to Toro Rosso at the start of the 2016 season after the first couple of races. He did score a podium, we've got to say that. He scored a podium at the Chinese Grand Prix, and then after the Russian Grand Prix, for the Spanish Grand Prix, he was demoted to Toro Rosso. Max Verstappen was promoted up to Red Bull. At the time, I was understandably furious. I think I said a few things about Max Verstappen I obviously now regret, because not like rude things, but I was saying, okay, he's not ready, he's not good enough for Formula 1. And then he goes and wins it. Okay, it probably wouldn't have happened if Mercedes didn't crash into each other, but still, he won that race. He scored. It would have even been a third place, wouldn't it? It would have still been a third place in that race, even if those two finished. So he comes in, does a great job, but Danny Kvyat is the most Toro Rosso and proceeds to have a pretty miserable end to the 2016 season, which continues on into 2017, and this driver swap really didn't work out. I don't know whether it would honestly been better if Danny Kvyat was just completely removed from Formula 1 for that 2016 season, because yeah, he didn't do himself many favours towards the end of that 2016 season. He was continually outshone by Carlos Sainz, and then in 2017 as well, it just didn't work out for him, unfortunately. Everything that he tried to do just went wrong, and I was devastated as a Kvyat fan. But I don't know honestly whether it would have been better for him to just take the rest of the 2016 out and come back in 2017 a bit rejuvenated, because that 2016 season just was a bit of a disaster after disaster. But thankfully, going forward into 2019, he's got his chance back with Toro Rosso again. He's had that year out with Ferrari as a test driver. He's done lots of laps with them in the simulator and in real life, and I think he's got a really decent chance of coming back and proving how good he is. I just got my fingers crossed for him, because okay, there's loads of memes out there, but in reality, Danny Kvyat is a very talented racing car driver, and a driver that does deserve to be in Formula 1. Even though I'm saying this as a fan, he does deserve to be in Formula 1, and I hope that he does prove people wrong in 2019. But I think maybe that switch from 2016 to Red Bull to Toro Rosso really destroyed him as a person. Like, inside, understandably, it destroys you as a person, and yeah, nothing really went right, unfortunately, for Danny Kvyat in the 2016-2017 season after that moment. So the next one on this list is, or the last one on this list I should say, is Rowan Crozier to Renault midway through 2009. So Renault hadn't had the most successful start to the 2009 season. This was all whilst the Crashgate was going on as well. I think we want to speak about that in a video at some point as well. But Crashgate was going on at the same time that Renault were really struggling in Formula 1. Fernando Alonso had come back to the team obviously a couple of years prior, and they were still really struggling. And Nelson Piquet, Crashgate, that all happened, and then halfway through 2009 they got rid of Nelson Piquet and needed to find a driver. That was Rowan Crozier, and he proceeded to really struggle once he got into that car. If anything, he did slightly worse than Nelson Piquet did in that car. It was quite similar. I mean, he was the test driver for Renault, so he had a lot of experience in the car, in the simulator and in the test sessions, but he didn't really come in there and sort of prove everyone that Nelson Piquet was the terrible driver everyone was saying he was. He sort of came in there and just made Nelson Piquet look like an average Formula 1 driver, which I think he was, and at that point Rowan Crozier was an average Formula 1 driver as well, because he came in there and didn't really prove too much. So yeah, that didn't really work out for Renault. They were trying to forget the past, and then unfortunately for them, Rowan Crozier goes to proceed to crash in the same place as Nelson Piquet in 2009, just 1 year later. A little bit embarrassing, but that all happened. So yeah, a pretty funny story in a way, that sort of whole mishaps of events. And in 2010, understandably, Renault didn't retain him. They went with a different lineup of Kubica and Petrov. I guess maybe a bit more, but you know, maybe Kubica should have been in that one in 2009. I don't know. Anyway, get to the end of the point, Alex. It wasn't a very successful switch for Rowan Crozier, and he had to go off and do some GT racing, do GP2 again, to sort of rebuild his career, and he did so, and he got back to Formula 1, and of course he had a bit of an iffy start to his career in 2012 when he came back, but undoubtedly now he's a very stable mid-table driver. He's a very competitive driver, and he's been beating Magnussen for the majority of the second half of the 2018 season as well. So I think he's a pretty talented driver, and we'll probably see him in Formula 1 for a couple of years to come, at least with Haas. That's definitely thanks to a bit of a resurgence halfway through 2018. So interesting. 2009, that switch to Renault was a bit of a disaster for Rowan Crozier, and didn't score any points, and understandably didn't retain him for the next season. But let me know in the comment section down below, were there any other mid-season switches that didn't really work? Let me know in the comment section down below. It'd be massively appreciated. Please remember to drop a like on the video if you did enjoy, and subscribe if you are new. Also, links in the description to my university project. We're trying to raise a little bit more money to complete this project. It's a 20-minute university documentary about motorsport. I'm really looking forward to it, because I'm taking part in my first ever motor race. It's real, it's happening in just a couple of months. So if you want to go and support that, it'd be massively appreciated. We've got a deadline at the end of January, so if you can help us reach the goal, all, that'd be massively appreciated. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day. It's been Hanks, and I'm out of here. Goodbye.